Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 34 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Let's start off with our Jiu-Jitsu quote, and then we'll move to our interview with a very exciting guest, Jeff Curran, and we'll finish up with the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. So the Jiu-Jitsu quote is, "When I tap, it means that I've accepted the technique, learned the lesson, and look to apply the experience next time I step on the mat. I never give up." And that's from Hiron Gracie. Great quote. So today's guest is Jeff Curran. And Jeff's been around for quite a long time in the jiu-jitsu and fighting world. He is a Pedro Sauer Black Belt. He owns and runs his own academy in Illinois. And he's been a jiu-jitsu practitioner and a world-class MMA fighter for many, many years. A few interesting facts about Jeff. As I said, he's a third-degree black belt under Pedro Sauer. He's co-founder of the XFO, Extreme Fighting Organization. Besides MMA, he has a pro boxing record of 2-2-1. He's fought for numerous organizations, including the UFC, the WEC, Pride FC, Bellator, and Strikeforce, and King of the Cage, and many others. Jeff spent 10 years ranked in the top 10 in MMA and nearly 5 years ranked in the top 5. He's been ranked in the top 10 in 2 weight classes, and he was only submitted once in over 75 MMA fights. He's also the first American to ever fight in a tag team MMA bout in Japan with Rich Clemente versus the Katani brothers. Definitely got to ask him about that in this interview. All right, looking forward to this, and without further ado, let's talk to Jeff. So speaking with Jeff Curran, so welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. I've been a fan of yours for quite some time, so I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Right on.
So you're a pretty busy guy. You were just at a major event. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with that.
Yeah, we had last week Jason David Frank. He's the original Green Power Ranger. Played some other Rangers as well, the White Ranger and stuff. He's came into Chicago for the Wizard World Convention, He does like Comic-Cons and stuff like that, and he's got a huge following. But he made sure that, we tagged the week of training on top of it because we've been trying to get him ready for a potential fight in the UFC. We're hoping we can get him a fight with CM Punk because he's actually got 4 MMA fights. He's 4-0, and people don't really know that. So he has that like celebrity appeal to him and a huge following. So it's just kind of the perfect matchup, for someone like CM Punk. So plus he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, so we're refining his jiu-jitsu, and he's been off the mat for about 3 years as far as that goes. But yeah, and then he just last minute, like 2 days ago, he's like, dude, we got to put together a kids class, and I'll invite all my fans out here as quick as we can, and we'll just do like a little meet and greet and a kids martial arts class. So we had like 50, 60 kids show up, and probably 150 or more adults here just coming to meet him and get autographs. So I've been signing autographs with him the past couple hours, and it just keeps going, man. People coming from like 7 hours away.
Awesome. That would be a great fight for sure. And I know millions of people have enjoyed Power Rangers, for many years. And I've heard rumor that those two may match up, but I didn't know if it would actually happen. So that would be really cool.
I think it's kind of like just got to get Dana to agree to it. I think everybody else is kind of interested in it, and then of course CM Punk has to agree to it. And CM Punk is a friend of mine too. I know him. He's from Chicago, but he's training at Duke Rufus's, and we compete against each other a lot, and I think it has the makings of a great fight.
Absolutely. I hope it'll happen for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about your recent Metamoris event that you participated in about a week and a half ago, the Metamoris show called The Underground, and you had a match against Pedro Munoz. What a great match it was, Jeff. I really enjoyed seeing that. Beautiful display of jiu-jitsu. Your guard was awesome. Great defense, great transitions, just an awesome display on both your parts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like commentators were saying, like Jeff Glover was saying stuff, I got beat on points pretty handily. But a month before, when we were talking about maybe doing this match, or a couple months before, one thing Hollick was really concerned about is he's been getting a lot of people, and it's more been on the MMA side to come out and just stall and not get submitted. And I assured them, as much as I am an MMA guy, I'm not. I'm a jiu-jitsu fighter, and that's how I fight. And, because there's no points and because I'm comfortable with my defense, I told him I promise I'll let loose and I'll take chances. And I fought a little bit outside of my more conservative style, and I kind of went for it, and that got my guard pass a little bit. And sometimes I had to scramble out of some submissions, which got me caught in some worse positions. But as far as Pedro was concerned, we hung out that night and we got dinner, and he's actually become a good friend of mine since we fought a couple years ago in MMA to a split decision. And that was his last fight before going to the UFC. We fought in a 5-round title fight for the RFA, and we were talking at dinner, and we just both kind of canceled each other out in a lot of positions, and he felt threatened and I felt threatened, and we both just kept trying our best. It was really hot, but what an awesome experience, man.
Yeah, and again, it was an awesome display, and it's kudos to you for getting out of your comfort zone and getting away from what might be a normal strategy in a competition and just going for it because of the nature and the rules of the event. It doesn't matter if you get your guard pass, just go with it and go. I loved seeing it. So great job.
Yeah, I played like the first minute or two when he's in my closed guard. I started falling into that old school, like I'm going to break his posture, climb my legs, and tie up an arm, and I'm going to start trying to counter him. And I saw that I had like a quick flash forward 20 minutes later, him still in my guard and me still trying to break him down, and it would have been a real boring fight. So
right. Well, good of you to recognize that and make adjustments.
I remember why I was there,
Absolutely. You know, this event wasn't very publicized or marketed very heavily. I've talked to a number of people that didn't even know it went on. So what was it like? Do you know why that was, first of all? And what was it like just being a part of Metamoris in general?
Well, it was cool, man. I mean, it's different. It kind of brings you back. They got a studio set up in a little warehouse outside of Torrance there. And basically, we were talking off and on different dates for months about me fighting somebody else on what they were going to attempt to do with this underground. And then had I had a good fight, then they were going to have me fight Pedro on the next Metamoris. And basically, when they finally decided it was going to happen, it was like 2 weeks out. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. You know, like I wish I would have known, but Pedro decided he'd do it. I decided we'd do it, and then we just went all in. And then they needed a week to finalize some of the other matchups. They wanted to announce all the marketing at once, and I think it's Hollick's way now with the underground to put together those fights that he just wants to see. And then he's got the Challenger Series to build unknowns and build guys that he can later put on these undergrounds to fight other guys like myself. And then, continue to build like who's really laying it on the line and who can he put in these like bigger dream matches on the pay-per-views. Gotcha.
Cool. Well, let's step back for a moment. And, you've been in the game for quite some time, and the game being jiu-jitsu and MMA, so the fight game. So if you would share with us how it all began for you, how you got your start and how that led you into jiu-jitsu.
I started training as a kid in karate, and I did some boxing with my grandfather for a few years. And when I was just started high school, I was in karate at a local school with a friend of mine, and he got kicked out of the gym and of the martial arts school for hitting some kid a little too hard or something. So he went looking around for different places, and he was a wrestler, and he came up, my friend Tom, and he came across this Hapkido school that had a ground fighting class, and it was being led by a guy named Adam Miller, who is still with me today, a second-degree black belt under myself and Pedro Sauer. And Adam was teaching this class and just took a Hoist Gracie seminar or something like that, or a Henzo or Hickson seminar. And I was like, who are those guys? But I'm going to try it, and I did that, and that was it. I fell in love with that, and I just started traveling.
Nice.
Started jumping into the seminar scene anywhere I could. You have to buy like a black belt magazine, find a seminar somewhere, and travel to it. And
yeah, because that was like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, so it was the first few years was a little rough like that, trying to really find my home. And then I met Pedro Sauer when I was 18, and I've been with him ever since.
Awesome. And talk a little bit about your time and your relationship with Professor Sauer.
I met him. My dad passed away when I was 18, January 3rd of 1996. And I met Pedro a few months after that. I went to a seminar in Virginia Beach. He was there. That's why I went. I went to meet this guy for a recommendation from Frank Cucci. And I went there and I met Pedro, and he was the same age as my dad. He knew my story. He knew I was really looking for some guidance, and he just took me in. He was like a father figure to me. He really started teaching me about how jiu-jitsu can relate to real life, and I was sold on anything he said, so I was pretty impressionable. So I really just took to all the lessons he gave me on and off the mat, and that was it. I was very drawn to him. He had a lot of interest in helping me along, and I like to think that we had something pretty special then, and it's only grown into something even better now.
What an awesome opportunity. I've heard so many great and positive things about Professor Sauer. Anytime his name comes up, people just say what a warm-hearted, genuine person he is, as well as being known as, incredibly technical and a masterful instructor. But everybody just has such high regard for him.
Yeah, it was hard to find.
What stands out in your mind as maybe the biggest thing or biggest lesson that you learned from him?
One that I always tell, when I would live in Salt Lake for anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks at a time when he was in Salt Lake City. And one time I was there for about 5 weeks. And I was a few weeks in, and I left my girlfriend back home. Again, I knew that was getting rough. I had money problems because I had no work. I just traveled. So I had a little school that I was operating, and that was starting to struggle because I was gone and I didn't have anybody good enough to keep it going regularly. And I remember like sharing with him all these problems I was having, and he just like, well, let's just go train, little Jeff. Let's go train. And it was like probably about 45 minutes of training, and he just completely spanked me. And I got done, and I was kind of mad at him, and I was like in tears, like and sweating, and I'm looking at him. He's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, Pedro, I'm having a bad enough day. Why do you gotta kill me? Like it was rough, Yeah. And he puts his arm around me, gives me a hug. He's like, "Little Jeff, just remember in life it can always be worse, bro. You had a bad day. You thought you had a bad day, and it got worse. So that it can always be worse mentality is like always sits with me when I do have bad days. I try to think, back to stuff like that, and it could always be worse. I could always be having this really horrible day and top it off with Pedro kicking my ass."
Exactly. What a great story.
Yes.
It's a great story. Sometimes you're the pigeon, and sometimes you're the statue, right?
Right.
It could always be worse. And by the way, shout out to Frank Cucci, who you mentioned. He's an awesome individual as well.
Oh, yeah, he's another role model for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think very highly of him as well. So over your time, throughout your time in jiu-jitsu, what's the biggest change you've seen in jiu-jitsu?
Well, I see a lot of guys playing footsie. I don't know what else to call it, but you'll see one guy jump guard, and when that guy jumps guard, the other guy sits to his butt, and then they sit there and fight over the legs. And I think that it's very interesting, and it's very hard to fight that style. Like I have some guys here getting really good, really good with that. I actually have a jiu-jitsu match coming in October, a professional match with in a gi versus Gianni Grippo. And he's going to be really tough, man, because he's that combination of like this really solid style mixed with all these new tricks. And I'm a fan of anything jiu-jitsu related, but I definitely see people getting away from – there's way more schools out there focusing on the sport aspects of jiu-jitsu and actually just training jiu-jitsu without a real philosophy behind it. Teaching moves, training hard, going home, and then it's like, do you even know self-defense principles to teach people? And this philosophy or the mentality that we should first of all be able to defend ourselves. If you're a blue belt, back in the day, if you were a blue belt, you were like a black belt in any other style. You need to be somebody that is masterful in protecting themselves and not getting beat up and not hurting people. And nowadays, I don't think a lot of the sport guys, old school sport guys, yes, newer guys coming up, I don't think they've spent a lot of time learning self-defense oriented stuff because it doesn't pertain to their sport. And someday, maybe when they're older, they'll get a little more interested in that old school stuff, but people need to maybe relook that, rethink that, make that a part of the fundamental process of learning jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like in the past it was the total package. You had self-defense, which should be, in my opinion, the core of all jiu-jitsu, and then the philosophy that just kind of intertwines through the whole thing. And then the technical moves, of course, and the competition, a great way to display some skills, but it shouldn't be the whole pie, so to speak.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of it's become. And as impressive as some of the technical developments are in the competitive arena, you lose a lot if that's the only thing you're focusing on and doing.
Yeah, and trying to compare, a 50-year-old guy who starts jiu-jitsu for the first time is never going to compete to a 20-year-old kid who's a competitor and think that belt level-wise they need to both challenge each other the same on the mat. I don't believe that. I think people can progress through belts without being the killer on the mat, but they should be held to different standards. They need to demonstrate controlling the non-jiu-jitsu fighter who's being aggressive and non-compliant and, making all those mistakes, capitalizing on all those mistakes that we are taught to capitalize on.
I couldn't agree more. Well said. So let's move into your fighting career, Jeff, the MMA. Now I believe your nickname is Jeff Big Frog Curran. Is that correct?
Yes.
So tell us how you got the nickname Big Frog.
Well, I have a tattoo of a frog on my back, and I was at Pedro's school when I was a purple belt. And so again, I was probably 19, 20 years old. And I had Pedro's nephew and actually Mika Cipelli. He's the Gracie Humaita rep in Las Vegas. Mika and him were calling me Big Frog in Portuguese. And I was like, why are you guys calling me Big Frog? And they said, because I warmed up the way I was warming up, and I have a tattoo of a frog on my back. So then a few years later, I was doing like an MMA interview for some website, and they asked me if I had a nickname. I said the only nickname I ever was called was Big Frog, and they put that up on my profile.
They ran with it, huh?
Oh, man, it just went crazy. So then I just kept it.
That's great, man. I love hearing how people's nicknames originate. It's cool.
And all the Gracie, the animals and the Gracie fighters, had the animal related.
Right.
I'll be the Big Frog.
That's good, man. So your pro record was what, 36-17, something like that?
Yeah, 36-17-1, a 50.
Okay. And you've probably more than anybody else out there have been involved in so many different organizations, from the UFC, Pride FC, WEC, Strikeforce, Bellator, and on and on. So that's incredible, first of all. So what was it like being a part of so many different high-level organizations and events?
I actually I can't believe it sometimes, because I'm the only fighter to have ever fought in all Zuffa-owned organizations. So I think there's 6 or 7 of them, and I'm the only one that's been in all of them.
That's pretty cool.
I give a lot of credit, to management there, because I was like kind of unknown when I was younger, and being from a small town outside of Chicago, nobody knew me, and I always just started making a name for myself, being the guy like at seminars or local tournaments that was winning. And when I started doing MMA, I started being the same thing, and there was no internet where like YouTube stuff or social media, so no news really traveled that much. It was all up to like my manager making the calls and telling people about me, or the word of mouth, real word of mouth. And it just took I was crazy, man. I remember one time like when I first got my fight, in like a fight in Hawaii or Vegas or Canada, and I was like actually leaving town, and people were like, "What? You're gonna go fight? That's crazy. Are you sure it's safe?" And it's like, I just went with it. And then next thing you know, I find out I'm in the top 10, and then I at one point had the highest submission. Highest rated submission victories on SureDog's database, like win ratio. So I was
nice.
The most submission wins per percentage wise. So I don't know. I guess I used to just have a little bit something else in me, or people really just got that much better over the years.
I believe I read where you were only submitted once in your MMA fights in something like 75 fights.
Yeah, I actually have a total of 86 fights.
86, wow.
And I've only been submitted once.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's from Uriah Faber. And
you fought Uriah for the WEC championship, correct?
Championship, yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
I won round one. I took it easy, and I thought my problem there was experience beat me. I sat there and thought, oh, this is going to be. I knew I was better than this guy. This is going to be an easy fight, like I thought. And then I got cut when I was in his guard in some weird. It was like a triangle, but my leg was through his guard, and he hit me with this back fist, and I started bleeding, and I was like, oh, no big deal. But then when I lost back position, like the blood started dripping out of my face, like kind of on his back and around my hands, and I was wiping my face, and the Vaseline was getting on my gloves, so my grips were getting really bad. And then I remember slipping off his back halfway through the second round and ending up on my back. And then the jiu-jitsu, or I lost my opportunity to win with jiu-jitsu right there. I felt like I was looking for a nice, solid win, like real technical setup and stuff. So I started playing defensive guard, and my eyes were just full of blood, and they were burning, and I couldn't see anything. All I remember was by feel, just feeling Uriah raining down on me, and I had to like cover and block and keep moving, and nothing was really landing. So I was under a little bit of panic, I was like, man, I could have had this fight over. So I got a little frustrated, a little careless, and I sat up and went for a single leg. And when I grabbed his leg, I was kind of anticipating a wrestling defense, like sprawl his leg out, and he just dropped to a choke really fast. And I went one way and ran into the fence, went the other way, ran into his leg, and I was just stuck.
Wow.
That fight sent me into a downward spiral. It was not good.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine, but you know what? You've done what very few people have done, and that's reach it to even being able to be in a championship fight, world championship. So, you were there. It didn't go your way, but you were there, so much respect. I got to ask you about one thing. You were the first American ever to fight in a tag team MMA bout in Japan with Rich Clemente versus the Katani brothers. Tell us about that.
That was my first trip to Japan, and we split $3,500, and the rules was 20 minutes, no time limit, no rounds, one straight 20 minutes. As long as you're holding the rope in the corner and you can reach over the top rope and tag any part of your partner's body, the referee will stop the action and send you back to your corners to switch. So they were fighting the whole fight. Rich is the bigger guy, and he's like, hey, I'm going to tire him out. And he goes out there and fights for like 8 minutes. And he comes back after he's like, I need a rest. And he tags me, and I jump in, and I clinch with the first one. And he goes and I clinch with him in his corner, so they tag out. So now I needed to clinch again. And the dude just throws a high kick, and I block it, and my right arm snaps.
Oh, man.
My ulna cracked completely in half.
No way.
And my arm swelled up instantly, and my hand numbed up. And I ran to the corner. It was maybe 20, 30 seconds that I was out there, if that.
Oh, my God.
I ran to the corner, and Rich is and my manager, Monty Cox, and all the Japanese people are yelling at me. They're like, get back out there. What are you doing? I'm like, my arm is broken. And the guy's coming after me. I'm like, screw it. I turn around, and I clinch with him, and I jump guard. And I start playing guard, and he goes for a foot lock right away. And when I put my hand on the floor to roll out, my arm started to flex, and it hurt so bad. I could feel the bone starting to want to rip through my skin. So
wow.
I just laid there and tapped out.
Oh my God. I for some reason I was thinking this was going to be kind of a humorous story, because things get pretty wild in Japan. But that's crazy.
Unofficially, I guess you could say I did tap out there, but it wasn't because of a submission hold. It was He went for a submission hold, and when I went to escape, my arm was bending. And yeah, dude, I was holy cow. And I had to go.
That's crazy.
Drug up and put my arm in a cast and fly home 16 hours, and I was just in so much pain. And then a few days later, I got surgery.
Wow, I can't even imagine. the ordeal.
Sure.
Man, so not quite a happy memory then. So you retired, I believe it was 2013, and then you came back out of retirement to fight. Was it 2014 or 15?
I retired after fighting Pedro Munoz in 2013, 2 years ago. And I just decided, that was my chance. It was, even though it's not UFC or anything, it was RFA. It was an undefeated, a really reputable guy. And I thought, winning a world title would be a great way out. But if I lost, I said I was going to be done. So it's kind of like I went into the fight thinking I'm going to be done. And again, 3.5 weeks notice on that fight, though. I was a replacement. And I busted my butt. I felt better than ever. My energy level was good. I lost a split decision. It all came down to the 5th round. He landed his knee that exploded my orbital and broke my nose. And I could barely breathe, and blood was pouring down my throat. And I jumped guard out of comfort, so I didn't have to take any more hard punches. And that's kind of where it ended. I hit him with a good elbow, cut him open, and just kind of ended really bloody. And I just decided that I was going to be done. And then shortly after that, a few months went by, and I was kind of living retirement lifestyle in my head. I was done. And I just kind of looked at my boxing coach, Doug Mango, and he's been with me 15, 16 years. And I'm like, Doug, you know what? I can't be done. He's like, no, you can't be. So I just waited for the right time, the right fight. I took some much needed time off to recover my body and feel better and heal up. And then I recently fought in March. I took a fight against this undefeated fighter, Melvin Blummer. And he was Melvin Bloomer, and he was 11-0, I believe. And it just did not go my way, man. On 1 second on the bell, he hit me with his back fist as he was running away from me. He threw a wild back fist, and I had a flash knockout. I fell on my face, took one more punch, and then came to right away and started getting up to my knees, and thought the ref stopped it because the round was over, and he stopped the fight. So wasn't good, man.
Well, again, kudos for coming out and trying. You do what most people don't, and you've been a true legend in the sport, so much respect. I believe that you've transitioned into a very successful coach in the MMA realm as well as jiu-jitsu as well, though, right?
I think I'm a good coach. We have good success. I think I have good fighters to work with, number one. I have good staff behind me and everybody good at what they do. But I do hustle to keep it all together, and I do have the ring experience to give good leadership there. So I've actually started teaching before. I was teaching people and coaching people before I fought. I mean, I've been having my school since I was 18 years ago. Started as a blue belt, just a small club. That's it.
Right on. So Pat Curran, you are related to him. Is that your cousin or your brother?
That's my cousin.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Just want to make sure. So, and he is a former Bellator world champion as well. What impact or influence have you had in his training and development and career?
I'm 100% really. It took me about 3 years to get Pat to move here and start training to be a fighter, because I told him he could be a world champion, And we won 3 titles together, and he's had a couple rough patches in the past couple years, but he's coming off of a really good win right now. And, he's 10 years younger than me, and I think he's, this sky's the limit for him if he wants it, and that's it. If he wants it, he can go get whatever he wants in the sport. If he doesn't, he has that right too. But I've been a big part of his, forcing him in a way to train and to be a fighter because of the talents that I know he has.
So you recognize that talent early on and pushed him to to become what he could be.
Yeah, and I just, at some point, it's got to be on them, but I was just, Pat, I took him to a UFC, and I'm like, you got to be doing this, and he's a great fighter. He is a rare talent that you come by very seldom, I think, in any sport, with just somebody that gets it and doesn't even need to really work too hard to do it. And that's him. He just, not that he didn't work hard, I'm saying it came natural to him. The movements, the techniques, he just was a natural.
He's pretty much made for it, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what about your time off the mat? Do you have any hobbies besides jiu-jitsu and MMA? I imagine with running a school and having a family and coaching that there's not too much time for anything else.
Yeah, I don't have much time. I have things that I guess I want to do in my life, but yeah, I don't get much free time. I live by a bunch of lakes and by rivers and stuff like that. So I think someday when I settle down from competing, which by the way, I do hope to fight MMA again here soon.
Okay, good.
I've decided that I will fight. My wife is not happy, so I'm still mulling through that a little bit, but she's been with me since the beginning, very supportive, and when she found out I was having some really bad headaches and stuff, she was like, we're done, no more. And I agreed, but then now I disagree because I came back really cleared from the medical testing, so
right.
Let's do it.
So it's on.
Yeah, so when I'm done fighting and when I'm done competing, and as some of my coaches here mature and can handle a little bit of the workload, I'm going to start trying to, get out and get more involved in like boating type activities because my kids will love it. And I need some balance because my kids, I have mats at home and I'm so burnt out. I don't even want to train at home when I have mats and teach the kids once a week, but I try to fit it in, but it's just not too much is sometimes not always best.
Sure. And I think you said the word balance. So
yep.
Hopefully at some point you'll be able to find more of a balance and it'll be a more fruitful, happy existence for you at that point.
Absolutely.
But, all right. Jeff, who's had the biggest impact on your life? And this can be professionally or personally.
Man, it's a hard one. My kids changed my life of selfishness, doing everything I want to do, and as much as professionally I can't bail on it all. Sometimes my kids have really made me rethink. I guess you could say what really makes me happy on a day to day, and of course my wife, but. She always put up with my selfishness. My kids, I don't want them to have to put up with that. So they've kind of, for the better, created some change in me that made me feel that, it's time for me to put other people before myself. Not that I don't. I'm very giving, and I put a lot of people ahead of me. Obviously, I couldn't run a business and mentor people being selfish, but doing that part of my life is me being selfish, is I guess the best way to put it. That's what I like to do. I like to spend time teaching and training and, traveling with my team and obviously competing and stuff like that. So it never occurred to me before to if I had a competition to, it's okay to take Saturday and Sunday off and do stuff with the family. It was always no, I have to live at the gym all week for the next 8 weeks, and I'm not going to be able to go to the birthday party. I'm not going to be able to go here. So I've learned to stop sacrificing, I think, because of my kids. They would be probably the biggest impact.
Wow, that's big, man. I mean, that's really big, and I couldn't agree more. My kids, I went many years in my life without having any kids, and when I finally did, it changes everything. And it sounds like you've really got not only a new fresh perspective, but a certain maturity from it, where you see life in a whole different lens, through a whole different lens, now that you have kids.
Yeah, it's about them now, but they grow quick, and someday it'll be about me again.
Yeah. But what you don't want to do is look back and say, wow, that went so fast, and why didn't I spend that quality time with them when I had the chance? So good that you recognize that and you have that insight, man. That's great.
I appreciate that.
All right, so you've obviously had a very interesting life up to this point. Can you think of a couple, 2 or 3 peak experiences in your life, Jeff? And again, that could be personally or professionally. What are some experiences that really stand out in your life? And obviously the kids that you just mentioned, but what else?
Probably the biggest impactful moment in my life was when my parents got divorced when I was like 8 years old or so. That hit me hard because that sent the next 12 years of my life, well, I would say next 10 years of my life, it just completely changed course from what it was supposed to be when my dad was living with us and stuff like that. It's just it set in motion a lot of crazy things. And, my little sister came out of that, which is a great thing. But other than that, not much good came out of it. And the next impactful thing was probably when I was 18 and my dad died. Because my dad died, my brother moved out of state, and I was kind of like, it was crazy because shortly after that I broke up with my high school girlfriend, and it was like in a real short period of time I went from all this responsibility of taking care of my dad, all this responsibility of having to gain money for myself and my dad and take care of our life, having a girlfriend that that I spent my time with and did my day-to-day with. All of a sudden I have none of it, and it's all me, and it's like I could do anything I want to do. So that was huge for me because I was training jiu-jitsu already for a few years and just in really deep into training, and my whole life, even though I had no idea where it was headed or if I was going to fight or whatnot, but my life was going to be on training in jiu-jitsu. And so that was big. And then I met my wife when I was 20. We dated for 7 years, then we got married, which was 11 years ago. So just probably meeting her changed everything too. It's like I started doing everything in my life for the fact that someday I'm going to end up settling down and marrying this girl, and just kind of, even though I was still a young kid and doing stupid things at 20 years old, my mind was still set on the fact that someday I'm going to be settled down with this girl, and she's going to be my wife. So those kind of, I think, are my major changes, like divorce, losing my dad, then meeting my wife, and later kids. And through the mixture of that, of course, my professional career and all that has plenty of impact in other ways, but those are the roots.
You've certainly had a lot go on in your life, positive and negative, and a lot of things you've grown from. And you've had a very interesting life, it sounds like, and it's just amazing the person you've become, Jeff.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. I just try to. I was just telling my life insurance, or my insurance rep that I use from Harper and Associates out here. She's been like a big supporter of our school for years, and her and her husband would come and do personal training and stuff like that. And she just lost her husband, and I haven't seen her since. And she came in to go over my life insurance plan. And that's crazy when you start putting together that sort of thing. And when I'm having conversations with her, and it was just all gone in a second, and all because the pharmacist gave the wrong medicine to her husband.
Wow.
And yeah, it just makes you. I was having some crazy conversations yesterday about it with her, and it's just kind of having this conversation just kind of reminded me of that. Like, I told her that, I think about my dad and what he taught me before I make major decisions and before I do things. And I actually argue with him in my own head, like with myself. I argue with myself based on my dad's, what he would want me to do, and with my decisions. And it's crazy.
Wow.
20 years, and he's still here.
Wow. He still has his insight and training still has an influence and a major impact in you and your daily life.
Yeah.
Awesome. He must have been an incredible man.
Yeah, he was a nutcase. He was a wild one.
All right, one more question. What advice do you have for someone just starting out in jiu-jitsu or who's been doing it a while but just maybe seems frustrated that they're not progressing like they would like?
I would just advise them to stay the course. We all go through these plateaus, but you can't have gains without plateaus. You can't just skyrocket to the top all the time. You have to live on that plateau for a while and kind of gather up this strength and skills, and next thing you know, you're on a different plateau. It's okay to be on a plateau as long as that someday you're going to be on another plateau, and it's going to be higher than that one. You just got to know that training, you can't train and not have progress. It's going to happen.
That's big, man, because I think there's so many people who don't know how to have delayed gratification, and it feels like they feel like they should constantly be progressing all the time, which is great when you are, but at times you are going to be on a plateau. So keeping that mindset, like you just shared, of going through it and knowing, more growth will come ahead if you stay the course and don't give up. So great.
Yep.
As we close, anybody you want to shout out to or thank in your life?
Yeah, I'd like to give thanks to Pedro Sauer for everything he's always done for me, and being my guide there and showing me the jiu-jitsu way. That's always my foundation in life. Thanks to my wife, for all the years she puts up with me, and my team and my staff. They're all awesome. They're always there for me. And thanks to all the fans of jiu-jitsu and students of jiu-jitsu who support this sport and, tune in to watch me even if I get beat. I try my best. And as far as my support goes, I have got my manager from Sucker Punch Entertainment, Brian Butler. He's got me some great sponsorships that are still taking care of me even when I don't fight, even when I'm not having a fight career. They take care of me as a coach. And that's Alienware Computers and All Max Nutrition. Those two are always there for me. So they're like my normals. They're always there. And Scramble Gear. Check their stuff out. It's awesome.
Wonderful. And your website, if anybody wants to find you.
My website is teamcurran.com, and you can follow me on Instagram. That's usually where I post most stuff. And I have a fan page on Jeff Curran fan page as well. But Instagram is Big Frog PJJ.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for your time, your insight, and letting us get to know more about you and your life, man. It's been an awesome. Totally respect you and appreciate your time very much.
I appreciate it too, man. I appreciate you taking the time and putting my story out there a little bit.
Okay, I really enjoyed that interview. Jeff is a class act and really appreciate him being available. Also wanted to shout out and say a big thank you to Mike Horahan, who put me in touch with Jeff and helped me arrange this whole thing. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Stay tuned now for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. Time now for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. Let's start with a quote. Activity disjointed from strategy or purpose is just distraction. Let us not forget the difference between busy work and our life's work. Focus now. Be intentional. This moment can be the start of something magical. And that's from Brandon Burchard, author of Life's Golden Ticket. So each and every one of us can start today to have the life that we want. We don't have to settle for the status quo. We don't have to settle for what we currently have. If you want something more, it's up to you to create and go after the life that you want. And this starts with deciding exactly what it is you want. Not what you don't want, not how you're miserable with current circumstances, but what you do want. Get clear, get focused. And why? Why do you want it? The more specific and more real the why, the more fuel you'll have, the more passion you'll have to work to make it. Also, what are you willing to give up to have that life? Ask yourself these questions. Write stuff out on a card. Put them up in your room. Anything that can remind you, or either have something daily that you start the day with reading. Either way, write down clearly what it is you want, what life that you want to design and build. Be clear on what it'll take and what you're willing to give up, and make that decision to do it, and do it today. Don't let life hold you back. Don't let circumstances or people or any kind of negativity hold you back. You do have the power to create the life that you want. So go do it. And that's going to do it for this episode of the show. As always, I appreciate you listening. I hope you're enjoying it. If you are enjoying it, please take a moment to let us know. You can leave feedback on the website at www.graciejujitsurocks.com. You can also like us on Facebook and Twitter. And also head over to iTunes and rate the show. And you can leave a comment there as well. Help spread the word about the show by telling your friends, and also reposting some of our Facebook posts on your wall as well. Again, thanks for listening. Until next time, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.